wish you had a great trip today. Unconventional. You came D-Day with the boats and everything. How was it? A good experience? Cool, nice. All right, so we're gathered today here. We're going to be in others, in ourselves, and we could mix together interactively later on, and whoever wishes can come up and play some things here about the features of each face, how each one perceives the other one, and see what we can understand consciously and subconsciously, messages that we can understand. So, has anyone, or rather, who of you have been to China? Okay, most of you. You're native Chinese speakers, or you know Chinese? Okay. So the first time you went there, was it easy to distinguish the faces of the people around you? Could you see their expressions or the differentiation in the features and everything? No, okay. And how about the language? Like Greek, everything sounds the same more or less. And why do you think this is? Okay, because for something we're not familiar with, we don't have distinctions. Like here in Greece, we have one word for snow, whereas the Eskimos have, I don't know how many words, like snow is good for the dog, snow that is good for eating, snow for this or that. They have more distinctions. But the same happens in the language we use, and even in ourselves. Although we might speak the same language with someone and have common words that we all understand, it is the association we put for each word for us individually that has a different meaning. So even sometimes we may speak with someone the same language, we're not in sync, we're in a different world sometimes. So if we want to convey a message to someone, and we're interested in him understanding what we have to say, it's good to know the language that person speaks in a deeper level, not only the words per se. And what would you do to communicate, if you want to communicate the message with someone to really pass the message? What would you do if you're really interested? Okay. Playback? Yeah, to have them involved, to have them engaged, so we're sure they're in tune with us and we can move forward. Okay, so just a second before, what is personal communication is considered to be the process of conveying an idea to the other person. But it starts actually a bit further back with ourselves, and it's the way we convey emotions to our own self. The way our brain takes all the environmental stimuli from the environment through our sensors, and we filter it in our brain, and there we see our own reality. It's the way our receptors, our eyes, our ears, our nose, everything take the information, and it filters us in what we say, we call an internal representation system. It is our reference chart for what each and everything means. This is good, like vacations is great, taxes are not so great, whatever, all these are these links we do in an emotional basis deep inside us. So the way we communicate with ourselves, what we tell ourselves, forms our reality and how we perceive things. And that defines who and how we think we are and who we are, because it is what we can do and what we cannot do. And most of the times, it's not that we cannot do something physically, but it is the borders that we put to ourselves. Say, like if I ask you a question, would you kill a butterfly to have a free trip all over the world? How many of you would do that? All right. And why would you do that? Okay. If you said, if I kill a dog or kill a person to do that? No. Why? So you have a different association to a person with a butterfly, right? It's like the insect has less, it's not that important to do that than a person. So all these are how we link things in our head. So if we want to be effective in our communication, we could share messages in such a way that they're logically understood, consciously understood, but first and foremost, emotionally appreciated. And conveying the messages takes place in many levels, And words are not enough to convey an experience. So we want to convey an experience using all of our senses. Like if we are dreaming and we think we live in a vivid dream, and we know it's so real when we wake up because all of our senses are saying the same thing. Have you ever experienced something like that? When you wake up in the morning or whatever, sometime in the middle of the night, and you say, this is so real, this dream. Because what you were seeing, what you were listening and feeling, all your senses were giving you the same confirmation. So you thought it was the same thing, it was real. And vivid dreams and distant memories in our mind are mixed after a while. So we can't distinguish after a while whether something was real or was it a dream or something like that. Because at that state, all our senses are giving us the same confirmation. So in our everyday communication, if we're able to connect and utilize all the sensory pathways, what we see, what we hear, even what we smell and touching, through our methods, we could mix the senses and create what is called synesthesia, where all the senses are mixed. And we have much better chances of being effective in communicating something. Like if you saw a movie and you wanted to describe it to someone you like, you tell it with such passion and intensity. So, let's see some tools of communication. The first is visual communication. It is considered to be the more immediate way of communication. Our brain can process images around 60,000 times faster than words. And we are all receptors and transmitters of the visual cues our body, our micro-expressions, our face, our posture are emitting at any time. Do you believe that the first impression is important? Huh? Why is that? All right, absolutely. I mean, first of all, the first impression cannot be undone. So it's the first impact that goes deep inside. Then we cannot have a second first impression, which is quite important. And we decide about other people, whether we like them or not, within 4 seconds. And about some other things, even much faster than that. And the average attention span is around 30 seconds, where the average commercials are. Now with the cell phones and the smartphones, I would say it's much slower than 30 seconds. When something is not where we want it to be, our brain tends to wander away, so we're immediately in our cell phone. So women are good and have more developed intuition because they could scan the other person in milliseconds much faster. And this is evolutionary proven because they had to be able to communicate with babies and understand and read from their micro-expressions and communicate the emotions and understand. Whereas men usually have more simple communication pathways. It's more direct, more simple, less distinctions. So, do you think we're aware of everything we see in front of us? No. Studies have shown that about 85% of what our eyes perceive affect us on a subconscious level, and just 15% is what our conscious mind picks up. And here are some stats for any of you who like numbers. Our conscious mind can process around 40 bits of info per second. Our subconscious around 20 million, 500 times more. And 320 gigabits per second. That is the subconscious. Some people say that it's as if we have 100,000 films or 10,000 films playing, like imagine in your computer having 10,000 movies playing simultaneously that our subconscious can see, but our brain, our conscious mind can pick up only one of them. So have you ever been zapping TV, especially debates, and having the sound muted and looking at faces to see? No? Or like not just debates, but generally speaking, like just putting the TV and zapping through? What happens is that what grabs our attention visually, first we stop there, we pause, and then we give that person the chance to hear what he has to say. Otherwise, we just pass by. And usually in debates or whatever, if we see a conversation between two people, we rarely know the facts, but we take sides subconsciously with whom we like. So we want the person we like more to be the person who is right. And their micro-expressions and their body language affects our decisions much more than we would have expected, because we subconsciously take the part of the person we like. Deep inside, sometimes this person resembles us or someone we would like to be, or in many cases with politicians, is the person who we dislike less. So he might be wrong, but we want him to be right. Now, this is an old study, but it's still relevant, from Albert Maharian, telling us that more than 55% in a face-to-face communication, when we see something, the impression that affects our visual system is more than 55%. The 38% is the auditory impact, the tone of the voice, the way he speaks, all that. And just 7 to 15% is the content, which means that it doesn't really matter what the other person is saying, but the auditory and visual impact we have on someone that really matters. Where do you think you are on that there? Because many people limit their communication ability at their 7 to 15% and deliver just the facts and nothing but the facts. So this limits our communication. So I won't tire you. This is just a small thing about how our brain has evolved, and according to a French psychiatrist who later on became an advertiser, LOUTRAKI, so we are born with this reptilian brain, which is responsible for all our automatic reflexes, their fight or flight, going to the bathroom, sex, impulses, whatever. And then at around 5 years old, and with our connection with our mother, we developed a second brain, which is called the limbic system, which is quite important. It's where we have this reference map we talked about before, the chart where we connect what is good and what is bad. And then later on, around 7, we have the cortex, the neocortex that develops, which is supposed to be the intelligent part. But the thing is that the reptilian brain is always much more powerful. And especially in a subconscious level, individuals are guided by their basic instincts. So it doesn't matter what we say to someone focusing just on the intellectual part, unless we have what is known in advertising a reptilian hotkey, we won't be able to be as effective as we could. Between the mind and the heart, it's always the emotional part we should connect, and we should be interested in creating a more emotional, receptive state in the other person, and then trying to change a logical or a rational belief in someone else. So how can we communicate with someone? And some are keys to navigate in the mind's labyrinth. And how can we connect even before talking to someone, before we open our mouths, in a subconscious way, directly? Let's see some keys we have. Let me ask you a question now. You came here with the boats, I didn't see you. What impressed you more? Do you want to say? Tell me what was more, the impact you had from that.
It was fantastic. The feeling of the speed was fantastic, so it was totally appealing to my reptilian brain.
Okay, so the speed. All right. About you?
Oh, the weather and the company.
The company. Okay, the feeling. Who else wants to share their experience? Anyone? You?
I immediately when we came in here, I thought it looked like a playground. Because it looked like it was coming from.
Okay, so it was what you saw. Okay. Gas mileage. So you were preoccupied with with the technicals, whether we're going to make it there. We will have to swim. All right. The way we experience our world through our 5 senses, but usually through our 3 senses, which is our visual system, our auditory, and our kinesthetic. And each one of us has a preferred system. It's not that we're just that, but it is our preferred. Other people are more visual, other are more auditory, and other are more kinesthetic. But we all go consecutively throughout the day in all these states, depending on the environment, depending on our mood. But it's quite interesting to see in what state or in what mood the other person is, so we can cater to that mood and be in sync with the other person and to be self-aware of where we are. So, some clues. When we're in visual mode, of course, it's the vision that is more important. Anything that goes to our visual system. Usually when we're in visual mode, we talk quite loud and very quickly because our brain produces images and words are not fast enough to explain. So we pick up any word that's there. We don't use the best words, but we talk very fast, very loud, and our posture is more upright, like that. If we're at the desk, we're leaning forward. And the words we use, first of all, we'll talk about what we memorize. We have visual memory. So if you want to tell someone who's in a visual mode something, you have to put pictures in his mind, because these people will have difficulty in remembering verbal instructions at that moment. The way they breathe, you could tell they're breathing from the top of their lungs, and of course appearances are important to them. And some keywords they use, because you can pick up the words each person is using, has to do with our visual system. Look, view, appear, envision, imagine, foggy, focused, and like, if you want, I mean later on or whatever, you could write down, you know, some things that appeal in the visual system, so you have in the back of your mind and have it as a game. Now, when we're in auditory mode, we're more relaxed. It's not what we say, but it's the way we express it. We are more eloquent, the wording, the sentences, we pick up better words. We're not that so high, we're in a lower state. Typically, we're more distracted by noise, and you could see people in an auditory state, they repeat things to themselves, sequences. Of course, they want to be told whether they're good or not, and the visual thing is not that important. And some keywords they use have to do with the auditory system, like listen, harmonize, resonance, this rings a bell, oh, he's deaf on that. So anything from that sort that has to do with our auditory is in that system. Also, our breath is from the middle of our lungs. And sometimes, usually when we're at home or we're more relaxed in an environment, we go even deeper down and we go into kinesthetic mode. And at that state, we're more internalizing, we're more into ourselves, we talk even softer, we breathe from the bottom of the lungs and you can see the stomach going in and out. You might ask them something and they will very much delay until they answer. So it's more about the feeling, the gut feeling of things. So some of the words they might use is deep, concrete, grasp, feel, tap into. So why is this useful? Imagine someone in a visual mode having to do something with someone in a kinesthetic mode. He will go in all sparky like that, and the other will be very soft, will be intimidated. So it's very important to be in sync with the other person and understand in what state they are at that moment to be able to communicate with them. And also it's quite important for us to know in which state we are. So let's play a game now. What is this statement? In which mode does it correspond? Visual, all right. This one? Kinesthetic, great. And of course this one? Auditory. You know, I invite you to play games like these with yourselves or later on if you go, and especially in boring meetings, you know, you could play with all these things and see in which state each person is. These are statistics in where men and women usually are, because we change, most of the day we change. And let's see something else that is quite playful. Have you ever noticed that if you ask someone something, their eyes tend to wander towards one direction or another? They have to think about something and their eyes go like that? Well, this psychologist, William James, in 1890 wrote a book, and he first suggested that our internal representations systems, the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, are somehow linked to the eye movements we make. And this was left dormant until in the 70s, Bandler and Grinder, who were in the NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, developed that and found how these cues work. So this, as you can see, is a diagram when you look at the person who is right-handed. For people who are left-handed, it is reversed. So if you asked a question that has to do with imagining something visual, his eyes will go up there. If it's something they have to remember, it goes on the left side. So the visual is the top side. In the middle zone, left and right, is the auditory. From one is remembering, and the other one is constructing or imagining something, sounds or whatever. And the lower part always is the more kinesthetic, which is the internal or the internal dialogue, either when you remember something. So let's play a game now. What color shoes did you wear yesterday? Where should the eyes go? Left? Okay, the movement would be like that, because it's remembering and it's visual, and it's the visual memory. How about this one? How would you look in bright green pants? I mean, unless we're wearing bright green pants or whatever. Okay, it goes the other direction because we're imagining it, and it's a visual construct. This one, remember the sound of raindrops on wood? So we're remembering something, the sound of something. So it's horizontal because it's in the auditory state, right? And how about this one? Which is, imagine the sound of my voice from underwater. Yeah. So, this one? What are you saying to yourself right now? Where should it go? Where should the eyes go? Okay, it's talking to ourselves right now, so it's going down. So it's going down in internal, it's talking to ourselves. And this one is kinesthetic, external. How's the feeling of your sand, of the sand? So we're feeling it's an external impulse. The other one is kinesthetic, internal, so it's going inside. This one is external. So you could play this game later on when you're like at the bar with someone, or when you're asking or you're grueling them in something, to see whether, if you're asking them, where were you yesterday, and you see the eyes go the other direction, you know that they're not remembering something, but they're constructing something. Of course, in order to be 100% sure about these things, you could ask many questions and you can see whether they're repeating the way they are. So what has to happen for you to like someone? What do you have to do to pass the test, to say, okay, this person, I like this person? It depends. Okay, or we haven't pinpointed it. Well, generally, people tend to like someone who is like them. So they like each other if they're like each other. If someone speaks like me, if someone uses the words I use and feeds it back to me, I'll say, oh, this is an intelligent person. He used all the words, all the keywords I'm using. But what else can we do to match the other person? If we match and mirror their nonverbal communication, we could create what is called rapport in a subconscious level very quickly. Most people try to find something through words, to find something common. Oh, you go to that, you like that sport, I like that sport too. And they find a common ground. But even before that, much faster, we could match and mirror the physiology of the person and have this connection. So, do you think smiling is important? Can you tell the real smile from the fake smile? Okay. What's the difference between a real smile and a fake smile?
The real smile brings to the eyes.
Uh-huh. What else? Like
The real smile, the face is synchronized.
Yeah, the whole face, the muscles of the eyes contract, it's the whole face. It's in sync, whereas the fake smile is like instantaneous. You could see a face that is totally expressionless, and then you see a smile, and then very abruptly it could go back to being normal or neutral. So the speed of it is important. If we cannot smile in an authentic way, people cannot trust us. It's the first thing we do. And it is contagious, just like yawning. Smile is contagious as well. But by smiling, truly smiling, we affect our central nervous system in milliseconds. So many people thought in the past that we must see something that creates an emotion and then we have the expression in the face. But it is the other way too. If we do something with our body, with our physiology, we can create, we can induce the emotion. So if we start smiling and doing these expressions or standing in a certain way, we can induce the emotion in ourselves. So it's the fastest way to have endorphins released into the brain and start feeling well when we have a positive smile. I mean, there are so many studies done in people who had depression in the clinics and with placebos and what's not. And the people who had the task to smile to themselves in the mirror for quite some time had a much better effect than others that were drugged. So we get into a receptive state, and the primordial signal of smile is the lack of threat. It shows submission. Artificial intelligence can now calculate the emotions. So the next time you take your cell phone and put it there and say, that's fake, or that's a true smile. And it can also understand the intensity of the smile, of the emotional response. So some things we could match in other people. First of all is the visual contact, is the smile, the expressions. You can see the expressions, but all this in a discrete way, not like variable. You know, the most important thing is to be aware and to what we say, to cultivate our sensory acuity and become one with the other, to be in sync. People who look at each other around 4 seconds in the eyes, but if you like someone, you can look at him in the eye for up to 7 seconds or even more. If the person is uncomfortable because of cultural reasons or whatever, looking at him in the eyes too long could feel awkward or create pressure. In the auditory state, we could mimic or match the speed of the person who's speaking. We could also the rhythm and the intensity, and of course the keywords, the tonality and the keywords. These are some keywords that are used from men and from women, statistically, and from Democrats and Republicans. They use it all in big data now and feed them. So kinesthetically, of course, the personal space of each person, cultural based as well, but we have to respect it. The breathing, that's a really big one. If you're face to face with someone in a meeting or like somewhere, and if you can mimic the rhythm of the breathing, you feel somewhat connected. Like the babies, when they're with their parents and lying in bed, they start breathing at the same rhythm with their parent and they fall asleep. If two people start breathing at the same time, with the same rhythm, they feel connected and they even don't know why. They just feel, okay, I feel so much rapport. And of course, all these things have to be taken, you have open gestures and a handshake and all that, and touch. We have to be in sync. If we do it too delayed, it shows out of sync. If it's too soon, the other person will realize it. So, what are 2 ways to destroy rapport with someone? What would you do to destroy rapport? Yeah, do the opposite. Or do the opposite non-verbally from what we say. So when we say something verbally, and when our emotions are not there, this shows. If I'm telling you something, but emotionally I'm not there, I'm somewhere else, my body is sending other conflicting messages from what I'm saying verbally, and most of us can pick it up. Say, what he says sounds right, but I don't believe him. Something's wrong with him. We see that many times with politicians who say the right things or everything, but they're not there emotionally. So if we tell ourselves, you're going to be great today, yeah, you're going to make it, and then our brain says, bull, it's not going to work. So the way we talk to ourselves has to be also emotionally in sync. Otherwise, we don't believe and we can get handicapped by our own self. So we can be all the types, all the day, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, depending on the mood, and being in sync with the other person, both mentally but foremost emotionally, is the best thing. And we could try to make it our strength, to be there first emotionally, and then to try to change the message. And not impose our own logical sequence to the other person, if we try to adapt to the listeners. So, let's talk about the face now, what we could see in the face, why we have a face, or what messages can be sent from the face, apart from the current emotional state. We can understand many more things that have to do with our personality, with our health. First of all, our face is the portal through which we communicate. We are hardwired in such a way that it's not just a mask behind which we're hiding our own self, But it carries a whole wealth of information about fertility, about health, and about our personality traits. We're genetically rigged as a species to be able in split seconds to understand whether someone is a mate, is an enemy, or all these things, whether someone is sick, whether someone is healthy. All these are in a subconscious level. We can understand these cues, but we don't realize it. So the face is the key to our identity, both ourselves and others. Displays a range of information about our emotional and psychological traits. And our conscious will most likely try to, to conceal most of them. But if we're smart enough and we'll see some things, we could start being aware of what our eyes are seeing. Our face is a dynamic structure. It changes both over evolutionary time and our lifetime. And just the portrait of Dorian Gray, it always reflects our current emotional state. When you look at the mirror and you see yourself, it shows exactly where you are emotionally. It helps us discern whether one is healthy or not, and the ability to quickly extract these information has given us the advantage as a species. Other animals have other pathways. So let's dive into this journey about the face and see what we can learn. We have unique faces. Each one is the mixture of all these genes from the past or whatever, and each face is unique. Even identical twins start to develop differentiations, small, either whether they're biological clones, they start to develop this thing. And it always changes depending on our emotional mood. Do you like cartoons? Okay, have you seen this movie, Inside Out? They used, let's say, a scientific background to depict the emotions in the characters and how we can recognize it. Although we have only 7 basic facial expressions, we have around 7,000 discrete in-between expressions that we can understand. Have you heard of the micro-expressions of Paul Ekman? In the 70s, he did this research and found that our face creates micro-expressions, which are contractions that happen milliseconds before we say something. And these are gender and race or ethnicity irrelevant. It happens to all races and everyone. Even in mammals, most mammals have the same micro-expressions with us. And these contractions, our conscious mind, if it's not very careful, can miss them, but our subconscious always will understand and distinguish. So he taxonomized, he made a whole map of all the feelings and everything. And actually, what is important that with his predecessor Gottman, they had a firm that was counseling for marriage. Within 5 minutes of videotaping a couple that used to go there, they were 93% accurate whether the couple would stay together in the following year. Not from what they were telling each other, but from the expressions of each face, what each person elicited in the other person's emotional response. They could tell with 93% just by thin slicing, going frame by frame, the micro-expressions and putting them down. They could tell 5 minutes whether you're going to be together in a year or not. So it's so much more than what we say verbally. He has an online test. If you go to his site, it's a basic, but he also has another version where you can test it. And I don't know if you're familiar with this series. It was quite popular. It went, I think, 3 seasons. Lie to Me. And let's see now some of the popular micro-expressions of people who made, and they were saying something else, and they were incongruent emotionally. Bill Clinton, Lawrence Armstrong, okay, about the EPO, Lady Diana, when she was talking about Dodi Al-Fayed, and George Bush, about the Iran situation. And this was nicknamed the fish face of guilt and shame. But even recently now, the last week, when was it? Zuckerberg was testified on the Congress, and they had software. Everybody was ready there to see whether artificial intelligence is up to the task. about like if they're better than humans to discern the difference in emotions. Depending on the question, you could see whether his answer was congruent with what he was feeling at the same moment. So, apart from the micro-expressions, what can tell us where we are right now, we can decode the image and see our deeper tendencies and predispositions. What is physiognomy? It's a method that aids the interpretation of the personality through the facial structure and the features. And it started long ago with Empedocles, who lived in Sicily. Actually, he committed suicide. He went into the volcano. He was thinking too much with his philosophy. And he was the first to theorize about the four elements: water, earth, fire, and air. And the shapes are important because they use them in face shapes. And he said that we have two elements, strife and love, or whatever we called it. We could think about it as repulsion and attraction in more scientific terms. Strife was more hatred and love, like the bad, the negative, the thing that takes us apart, and love that brings us together. So it was more in a symbolic way, in a metaphorical way. He was using metaphors at the time. Now, his work was later taken on by the father of medicine, Hippocrates of Kos, who introduced the four human temperaments, and these distinctions are still used today by major psychometric test tools. It was used by Carl Jung's temperaments, or have you ever, I don't know, your companies, if you use the MBTI, Myers-Briggs type indicator, or DISC, extended DISC. All these have some influence by the temperaments that Hippocrates came about. So he had four temperaments. One is the air and his triangular face, which is hot and moist and forms blood. And it's the temperament, the sanguine temperament, who thinks about, he's more nervous, he's good at planning other people, but not so much implementing. He's the more nervous type, very gets excited easily, more brainy type. Then we had the other type with a more inverted triangle. Now, this is really grossly speaking, but that's how they differentiated the faces at the time. It's the more yellow face, who was hot and dry. It was yellow bile, and was the choleric temperament. This is, again, a person who's very active, but more irritable, more physical energy than the other person. Has much more activity than the sanguine. If the sanguine is more mental, intellectual, this one is more physical. Usually fair, tallish people are the choleric temperament. Then we had the round face with the white and pale colors, the water face, which is more dreamy. It's cold and moist and forms phlegm. And you had the phlegmatic temperament, a person more in his dreams, tends to avoid, any responsibility. Very good, caring person, but not the leader. It's more a follower. A good person, but is low energy. And then we had the square, the more melancholic temperament, the earth, that is dominated by the earth, more chubby, muscular, dry and cold, the black bile, with a melancholic temperament. This is a doer rather than a thinker. And this person, gets excitable very easily, is very good in social relationships, hates to be alone. That's why he gets melancholy. He gets these black depressions when he's alone. And rather first shoots and then asks questions, that kind of type. So these basic temperaments were later taken over by Aristotle, who was the first person who wrote something about physiognomy in a book, Physiognomonica. He used to associate human face likenesses with animals. A man who looks like a lion, a man who looks like... And what is interesting is that he used very scientific methods. In what way? He used his pupil Alexander the Great from when he was going in his expeditions down with the Persians. So any deceased Persian emperor, Alexander would chop off the face and send it to Aristotle with a biography. And so he was studying the analogies in the proportion of the face in conjunction with a story. So please don't do the same thing here. I prefer to analyze the face right as it is. So they used this scientific method back then. And even Socrates was supposed to be a really good physiognomist at the time because he predicted the Alcibiades' rise from the markings of the face, and also of Plato. By just looking at him the first time, he said he was talented. Maybe other reasons as well, but who knows? And there's a story about this physiognomist of the time, Zopyrus. While Socrates was walking, as most of them, their philosophy was done as they were walking, because walking and movement helps the brain be more active. And Zopyrus came there and said, "What are you talking about, philosophy and all these ideals? Your face shows that you're totally impulsive, you're a victim of your passions, you got nothing to do, your face, Socrates, with what you're teaching." And all the disciples got very angry. So Socrates said, "Okay, wait a minute, that's how I used to be. That was my true personality before I started studying philosophy and started being very, self-disciplined and all that." And the whole point with that was that physiognomy is not a fatalistic theory. It's something that reflects our inner tendencies. But if we want something, we cultivate our strong points, and we can control the other points that need some developing. And this shows after a while in our face. Maybe the bone structure doesn't change, the bone structure which is static, but the dynamic features, which is the flesh and the muscle, does reflect after a while where we are. Even in Delphic oracle, which is divination by the means of the face, they were using it to assess the people who used to come there, how we're going to tell them what we're going to tell them. So they were giving this oracle, but always having in mind who the person was. And of course, many Greeks at the time used to name their children based on their physical appearance. And Europe means white face, Achilles, no lips, lipless, Platon, wide, Asterope, moon, or Aerope, which is air, Pelopia, muddy face, the color of the face as well, or Inope, which is wine-faced. It's also the complexion, not only the features. Simois, which is a snub-nosed. So they use these things to give namings to their children. And Achilles, his mother Thetis placed him on the holy fire to make him immortal, and the side effect that his lips were burned. So that's why he was lipless. So now we have artificial intelligence, genetics, all these confirm the findings and the association between our morphological characteristics and our psychological traits and predispositions. And there's a relation between the structure of the face, as everything in nature, like form follows function. There's a relation between the structure of the face and individual features with psychological feature is developed or is left in a dormant situation. So let's go into something more juicy now. Why are we different? I mean, why do I look like a man, or do I? Why should we differentiate women and men's faces? No? I mean, it's useful to know whether someone's a possible mate, right? I mean, in evolutionary terms, it was copulation. So we had to find a way, just by looking from far away, to differentiate these features. Now, what is more responsible? In women, it's like the hormone of estrogen that gives more fat here on the cheekbones, has lighter color, prevents the darker color that testosterone gives the appearance of fuller lips, the eyes appear larger because the whole frame of the face is more elliptical, is more delicate. In men, is responsible for the muscularity, hair and hair loss, aggressiveness. You could see from the jaw, and for the forehead, you see different shapes that are more different than women. So here we have a classic, let's say, alpha male with the more brute characteristics. And it's interesting that women, according to studies, when they're approaching menstruation, they like to go for the complete alpha male with more testosterone. That means more healthy reproduction of the genes, whatever. But afterwards, they find that the pheromones of testosterone repulsive. They go for the men who are more cortisol-based, who are more quiet, who are more, caring and more loving. So it's interesting. I mean, studies show that. Now, people have tried over the ages to define what is beautiful. Do you think beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or is there anything deeper to that? Okay.
I think it's rather subjective. And there's been a lot of discussion about, especially the Greek definition of beauty. If you go to the more further down in the Middle East, Syria and so on, they have other different, ideas, how people should look like. So I think it's very subjective.
Okay.
That's my take. So let's see.
Whatever. Okay. Well.
I dare the risk.
All right. So the ancient Greeks had the golden mean. So they divided the face into three and had equally proportioned. Polycletus, who did the Doryphorus, which means the spear bearer, had a more mathematical formula of what we see, the 1 towards 1, 6.18, the divine proportion, what is well known, Fibonacci later on. They use it also in testing the stock markets or whatever, anything beautiful supposedly. Parthenon was built according to that formula. And the face should be 2/3 wide and 3/3 in height. The later ages, in the Renaissance, they used to divide the face in sevenths. Botticelli and Da Vinci, all of them, most master artists, were good physiognomists.
It's kind of defined by the Greek, because when you go to China, for instance, it's a male should rather be, quite heavy, overweight, and that's kind of success. And if you go to China, for instance, they don't have the same, or India, for example, the same ideas.
The same measures. Well, I won't answer because I'll tell you just an experiment that happened. In 1993, there was this anthropologist, Douglas Jones, and he took a series of pictures of women and men, more symmetrical to asymmetrical, and he went all over the world. He went down to Middle America, to some tribes that had no external influences from other civilizations, and they had the people scoring the faces depending on the lichens. So they went there, they went to Russia, they went to India, they went to Venezuela, and they had these people from all over the world score various faces, from symmetrical to asymmetrical faces. And then they took all the findings, and what was surprising, that the scoring coincided. Like, generally speaking, people tended to find more symmetrical faces more beautiful. And there was a reasoning before that, like evolutionary theorists say that more symmetrical faces means better copying of genes, no errors. That means a healthier person. That in turn means that I'm attracted to something healthier that will give us better offsprings, and that then I feel it's beautiful. So there was this notion that the more symmetrical faces, each culture has its own, how fat the face is or how thin. It comes and goes in trends. But we're talking about the symmetry, that apparently it's more deeper inside. And people that tend to like averageness, with the little, let's say, touch of the differentiation of the sexes for men and for women, but they go for averageness, especially in marrying. Babies, when they're 3 to 6 months old, look at symmetrical faces for much longer than other faces. And what is interesting, that women, again, when they're approaching their menstrual cycle, their fingers, their lobes, and their breasts become more symmetrical than the other times. So there's something there. It's this thing over here, a dark cycle around, that appears in more young people, and as we age, we lose it. It fades out. So people who have more pronounced limbal ring are considered to be more, let's say, attractive. There are many fake lenses, contact lenses, that they wear with a degradation around that and mimic it. And another experiment that happened that had to do with our pheromones, the aroma we emit, was it was a double-blind test. Like, they took 10 men that had from symmetrical to asymmetrical faces, and they had them wear this t-shirt day and night for 3 days until it was like totally disgusting. They had one group of women score their faces from attractive to non-attractive. And then another group of women that had no idea how these men looked took the t-shirts and started smelling them. And they scored from better smelling or less disgusting to whatever. And they took the scores together and they found out that the better smelling t-shirt corresponded to the most symmetrical face. What else? We're genetically programmed when we look at faces of children to be attracted, to want to protect them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be around as a species so long. Women's iris dilates when they look at babies. And not only that, we associate all the feelings and the personality traits to these proportions, like the high forehead, eyebrows far away from the eyes, the short nose, plump lips. We associate all the characteristics of a baby, that vulnerable, true, to this kind of face. So even adults that share these analogies or these proportions, we tend to associate it to them as well. And what is interesting is that in some systems around the world, even criminals that have committed a crime and had baby face took the lesser penalty than someone else. Even parents that have like two children, one is cute, baby-faced, and the other one not so, will be very lenient to the cute little baby-faced kid than the other one. Also, Arthur Jones, the other guy who did the test around the world, took pictures of cover girls from all the magazines and fed it into a computer and tried to find the analogy, the proportion of the faces of these girls. And they found that it correlated to a baby or a child of about 6 years old. So, of course, not the models, they didn't look 6 years old because they were makeup and all the hair and everything, but the analogy, the proportions of these faces were about 6 years old. And so, for some subconscious reason, they were used as a cover to evoke this response from the viewers. In a while, we'll be able to engineer the human race, and artificial intelligence will be able to tell much faster than us. Now, have you thought how we perceive faces? Like, if you think about someone you saw, but you don't know him, how would you describe him? Exactly. Our faces, because our mind is not linear. We have to, all these processes, so we have to encode or decode situations. So in that way, we encode the highlights from the face. And that's why many times the caricatures, which are exaggerating the features, are much more accurate than a line drawing of someone. Because we say, oh, that person with the big eyes, or with a big nose, or with a jaw and everything. So we perceive other people like caricatures in our brain. And we are up to 23% faster at recognizing faces that are caricatures than normal faces. That's why sometimes caricatures are more good than normal portrayals. Now, all of us have a face, right? But we actually have two faces, two sides. And we can see right now what the left and the right side of our face means. So, let us have a look now. Later on, We can try flipping each other's face and see how symmetrical. I mean, now with the photo software, it's easy to flip around. And see, we'll see why it is important to see the left and the right side of the face. It has to do with the symmetry we're talking about and the expressions and everything. So, if you notice a difference between the left and the right in the expressions, you'll see why it happens. So, as we said, the right is the one who we represent to the world, controlled by the left hemisphere, and it's what we want to put outside. This psychologist, Ian McGilchrist, calls the right side of the face as the Berlusconi of the brain, because it likes to control our media and it raises everything it dislikes. And also it creates sensory realities, whereas the left side is the more expressive part. So we're more vulnerable in the left side. So if you are with someone in a meeting, it's better to sit on the left side of him, so you have this left side of the face, and he's more receptive to you. Generally speaking, the right is more austere, as we will see. And the Phantom of the Opera knew something. He was hiding the right side of the face, but he was leaving the left side of all the true expressions uncovered. Now, we have a friend of ours here who has admittedly a very symmetrical face. All right? So let's see the two left parts of the brain, of the face. So we have the normal, two left, and two the normal, two right. Look how different the expression is. And we're talking about someone with a really symmetrical face. Generally, the right side is more austere, and the left is more easygoing, much more open in most people. This gives a more furious look, you know? So why is this interesting and important? Because when you see lopsided expressions in someone, like if he's smiling from the right side, but the left side of the face, of the mouth is going down, you know definitely that he's trying to appeal smiling, but deep inside he's concealing a more morose personality. Generally speaking, the more the whole of our face is involved, the more genuine these expressions are. So which part do you think yours is the dominant one? Have you looked in the mirror and thought which is more dominant? Like you have a favorite side of your face?
Yeah, but pictures,
Huh?
many people.
Excuse me?
Many women have the pictures.
Okay.
Side.
What's your...
Mine?
Yeah?
Left.
The left?
Yeah.
Okay, so your more expressive part is your dominant. Okay. So, what else can we see in the face? Now, we'll talk about a few things, and if you're interested, we can bring some of you here and feature by feature see a few things we're talking about and see whether you could detect what the feature is in each personality, how it is, and how we can find out. Generally speaking, in the face, what we see is from the head on, we could see quantitatively what's in a face, and from the profile, we could see what each person expresses in their everyday behavior. So from the head on is what is there, on the profile, how it is expressed. The height of each zone means quantitative development or not, more theory, more idealism, and the width means more stability, more practicality. So you see many business people are more wider-faced, they're more doers. Academics have more elongated face. They're more in theory and idealism. They're not so much into implementing what they want to do. And this axiom, you can apply it to each and every feature, in the nose, in the mouth, and everything, and the face as a whole. So we begin as the face as the whole, and then we go into details, but the detail is always under the generality. Now, we have the outside of the face, the frame of the face, which is our bone structure, which is static, it is inherited. And this determines the shape of our face. The various shapes of the face, oblong, etc. We'll see about them in a while. And then we have the dynamic features, which is flesh and muscle, which changes. And it's more important, but you can see where now the person is and how he is developing, whether he's cultivating his strong points or not. And this, especially the inner triangle here, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth where our receptors are, show exactly, it's called the petit visage, it's the receptors, our interface. Our immediate responses are there, and our social behavior. So, for example, we have a model here who his inner face is what we call more sensitive, this kind of inner outline. And here we have an outline, a frame, more, as we saw, muscular and angular from the alpha male. This person is influenced specifically, this frame. And on the other side, we have a more elliptical frame. It's the middle zone that's more important. The lower zone, which is our instincts in the upper zone, go in. So this person is more influenced deeply by the environment. So if you take the same middle face and apply it to each person, you could see how he looks, and you can see how the other person looks. So although, in theory, they have the same sensitivity in their receptors, the way one responds to each circumstance is quite different. This person will be influenced at the moment, but not deeply. Well, this person will be very devastated by something of the environment. So it's quite interesting to differentiate the inner and the outer frame in people. We change when we're babies. We have these open features as we talked about, and as we grow older, our features are more retracted within the orifices. When we're young, we're very receptive. We learn so many things, but we don't have the ability to stop the incoming influences. But as we grow older and our features go deeper inside, we have better ability to stop, to control things, but our assimilation ability gets modified. So we have the expansion and the retraction, and we're, let's say, all of us in a certain degree somewhere around here, and we go from extroversion to introversion. This is a very gross simplification, but you can see the faces, more extroverted, open features, and the more closed within the orifices features that goes to introversion. As we age, they get more retracted. So this is a couple that has open features, not very good pictures, but it is the only one available that had them from 1977, 87, 97, 2007, and how the features have changed, especially the woman here that had the more angular face. You could see how the features came further closer. Which feature do you think is more predominant or your strong feature? Anyone wants to share? Any feature of the face, what is more predominant or not? Or like if you have someone next to you, you could look at the other person. I'm interested in seeing how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive other people, and see whether these beliefs coincide. Are you interested? Yes. Okay. So do you want to group in pairs? Or okay, it's better if someone you don't know, but it's the same thing, but it's visual. You could group in pairs and just tell me one feature that you think the other person has a strong feature, and for yourselves. Okay, the nose, the eyes, the mouth, okay, the jaw, or whatever. Like you think the other person has a more predominant feature, or one of these features. I'll give you a few minutes, and then. Are we here? Okay. All right. Do you want to share? I'm interested in telling me what you believe your predominant feature is. And now, your name? Eric? Asim. Okay. And then Asim will tell me his own belief about which. I hope you didn't mix them together and didn't cheat. Okay, whatever. So tell me what your feature you think is more predominant. Okay, whatever.
I honestly don't know, but I think
Your chin? Okay. What do you think his feature is? It is the chin. Okay. And how about your feature? The cheekbones?
I think that and the chin is quite.
The chin. Also the chin. All right. Okay. I won't tell you right now. You'll have to wait for a second to see. How about you two?
I think for me it's my eyes.
Your eyes, all right?
And you said eyes and nose.
Yes, and I would say nose with her.
Uh-huh. So you think it's her nose, you think it's your eyes. And how about you? Your eyes, okay.
It's his eyes.
His eyes. Cool. Okay. You too? You did? Whoever wants to share. I mean, this is not whoever wishes. It's voluntary.
So I think actually I don't know what I think it is for myself. But I think my lips.
Uh-huh.
I need follow lips and chin.
Lips and chin. Okay. And you?
Of my eyes.
It's your eyes. How about you?
Yeah, well, what I was told was that my cheekbones and my jaw
Okay.
kind of
Yeah, all right.
and I've always known or been told that I inherited my grandmother's jaw.
Okay. Very energetic.
Yes, but it was very
Okay.
it resonated.
How about you?
I was told that my nose was our family nose.
Okay. And you think about him?
Yeah, I thought about his nose, but also his face is
Uh-huh.
right.
Okay, okay. You?
Yeah, I thought it was my nose.
Yeah.
I thought it was before.
All right.
I thought it was my forehead.
Okay. How about you?
I thought it was my eyes or
Uh-huh.
you said before my nose.
And you?
No, we were three, so we didn't.
Okay, whatever.
All of us, we just managed to.
Oh, so you just
Yeah, it was.
okay. So anyone else, or should we go further on? Anyone else wants to share their findings, or they had a difference between what they perceived for themselves and thought the other person thought something different? Your smile. Okay. Okay. So, we said that the face is divided in equal proportions. Okay. And let's see what each portion of the face means. The same guy we had before, but we'll see different parts and what each zone means. This zone is so much important in communicating with the world around us. I mean, if you just focus on this zone, you could see immediately where the emotional response is. The upper zone is more for job finding, the way a person thinks. And this is our energy center. You could see whether the person has a good engine able to implement the bidding of the mind or the passion from the emotions. There you could see the stamina and stability of a person, whether one is tiring easily, whether one is like steady going. And here we'll have a few caricatures. that show the extremities of types, so we can very easily visualize the difference of each type, intellectual or mental. It's like cartoon, the way it expands the other zone. You can see many professors, or in movies, the way they cast the characters to depict a certain personality. Many times it's used in such a way so subconsciously it gives the message that we need. The emotional temperament is the more oval shaped, as you will see here, with the middle zone pronounced in width, because as we said before, width shows capacity and sustainability, and height means more quality. So the person who is more on the middle zone has more width. And this is the classic action man that you will see here from the comic books. You see directly how he looks with the lower zone. It's all action. And not much control before the moment we respond, before action. So we see the three types together here. Triangular, the upward, the normal triangular, I would say, and the oval shape. Of course, they're all the in-betweens, but these are like the very basic ones. If you remember from before, we talked about Hippocrates and the temperaments and all that. There's some correlation between them. Extremely, of course, in caricatures, so we can remember them. Now, from the profile, can you tell which each face corresponds to? Like, what type is this one more? Baby more? What? Physical, emotional, intellectual? Emotional, but you can see the upper part. This is the middle part of the face where these zones are. I just put it like this as an outline, so you can have an idea. This is more the middle part of the face that is more exaggerated. This is again emotional, but a different type. This is more aggressive, that it comes out, and this is more passive. It has a different curvature. And here we have both action, which is the lower jaw projecting, and the intellectual is more, I would say, balanced face, but these two are more predominant. And these are correspondence for the various face shapes they used to have. So we see the width and the height, the tonality of features. That's very important. When you look at the face, the first thing you notice whether the person is active, is alive, vibrant, or he's more passive. And this you could see in the way the shapes are. Like the eyebrows go further up, the nose has a triangle like this, the mouth could go upwards. You see the person who has more tonality. And the more passive face, you will see all the lines going downwards. Has less energy in all these things. The dominant and the dormant features we talked about and you found for each other, and we'll see whether they are like that. Bone and flesh and muscle. So the bone structure is what is inherited from our parents or goes back. It's static, it doesn't change more or less, but what we can change is the muscles, how we contracted the flesh and muscle. There are many studies have shown that people who were identical twins and they grew up separately, and depending whether one cultivated these strong points or not, you could see, although they were identical, like the mold was the same, their faces were changed depending on what they did with what they had. So the flesh and muscle shows you exactly how we use what we have. The left and the right side, the left is the more emotional, the right is the more conscious. So we look for similarities and which part is more expressive, what this could mean, as we saw now. And the outline is the static features, and the receptors, the inner, the immediate where we are. So let's have a look right now at some of the individual features, and then we'll play a game and see each feature for each person, if you want, or anyone if you want. So the head shows the quality of the brain, the forehead represents the powers of the intellect. The inherent mental characteristics are revealed there, but the muscularity does matter. So the way the face is, this is the phrenology of the 18th century, but it's not that relevant, just that. the way we have the profile from the face is quite interesting. The more upright the profile is, like over here, like a baby, it's the upper zone of the forehead. We have a person who is more, has what we call subconscious imagination, is more living in their dreams. And the more slanted backwards it goes, like this, just focus on the forehead, we have a person who thinks more impulsively. So if, like, my forehead is slanting, which means a person like that sees something more visual memory and jumps to conclusions fast and has very quick to make decisions. Usually right, but not always. People who have more upright foreheads from the profile need more time to analyze every aspect. It's more balanced, and if it's the top portion, as we saw before, if it overhangs, it's too much imagination, not that much practicality, and these people tend to live in the dreams, sometimes a lot of depression. Generally speaking, women have the upper forehead, but not always, it depends. So from that you could see whether a person, has an impulsive way of thought or needs more time to analyze something from the profile and, the way you experience. So, muscularity is quite important. When you see muscularity in the forehead, it's like an alive muscle there, an alive brain. If you see very, no muscularity at all, not much activation of the area. And now, what is one of the most important features, which is the brows and the eyes, located between our mental, our intellectual, and our emotional regions. It corresponds to our conscious mentality. So it's like a whole system together, but we can divide it. The brows is hair, and generally in all animals in nature, hair is a sign of intensity. So the darker the hair, the more thick the hair you have, an animal that is more, has nervous energy, is more alive, and the thinner the hair and all that, you have someone who's more quiet. Of course, it depends again in anthropological people who are more in the Middle East areas or the hemispheres have darker melatonin and everything, and northern people are more light. But generally speaking, more intense hair shows more intensity of nature. The eyes are considered to be the window of the soul, okay, rightly, because it's the mirror of our understanding. And it is one feature between the two movable features that we have, the eyes and the mouth, that you can see where the person is at the current moment, as we saw before. The eyes are more difficultly controlled than the mouth. So if you look at the eyes, which shows immediately where the mind is thinking about, we can understand. Of course, if we pluck our brows, it doesn't change our inner personality, it just changes the way we give the impressions to other people. All right, so we have these eyes that are like this, that is more deep set. These more deep set eyes, evolutionary people that had to look long distances, etc., had deeper set eyes in order to be able to discern things. But people who do have deep set eyes are more observant and can detect more minute details than people who have eyes outwards. And it's more an aggressive eye, one could say. Here we have eyebrows that are further up than the eyes, and these are the more receptive eyebrows. As the children can perceive a lot of things, but there's less self-assertion and less self-confidence in the eyes that are very high up from the eyebrows. This is a girl's face, but look at the intensity of the eyebrow she has. And the way we could move our eyebrows, actually evolutionary, give us an upmanship from the other animals. And it's considered to be part of the puzzle of how humans manage to communicate by raising the eyebrows and producing all these emotions, whether they affirm something or not, just by the eyebrows. And many actors that are using their eyebrows, you would see that they have the ability to move their eyebrows very much because they produce all these emotions, or separately. If we have very thick eyebrows, it means more intensity, more nervous energy, whereas the thin, frail constitution has more thin eyebrows. Longer eyebrows are considered better than eyebrows that start but then fall off and fade. It shows more consistency. If we have the one over the other, it shows a person who has more imagination and also ambition. And many times people have eyebrows between the eyes, and symbolically this blocks the energy from the intellectual to the emotional part, might be jealous or whatever, if you see this kind of formation. Short eyebrows, it shows immediate enthusiasm but not long-term action in that. With the age, eyebrows get more thin and frail, but not in every person. Some people get much thicker eyebrows with the age. So let's see about the eyes a few things. The ideal distance is the width of an eye between an eye. That shows a balanced mind. If we have eyes that are closer together, you see they're closer together, we have a person who is good and detail-oriented, but is sensitive to slights, could be misunderstood, but they're very good in doing tasks very meticulously. But most hypersensitive people are like that. On the contrary, if you have people that have wider spaced eyes, these like to think about the generality. You shouldn't tire them with all the nitty-gritty details with something. They think in systems. Whereas the person with the close eyes, you have to take him step by step. If you just tell him a general idea, he will say, no, I have to know each sequence from there. Again, the tonality, downward sloping eyes, you could see from here to here. If they're downward sloping, we have a person who is more passive and pessimistic, low energy. Upward sloping, more tonality, intensity, what we call animal magnetism and independence. It's like the eyes of attack, it's the more the predator type. And look at the same face now, how easily the expressions and from the angle could change. People who have floating irises, it's considered that they dissipate energy. When in normal condition, the iris should touch the lower eyelid. But many people have this, so it's dissipation. And of course, the pupil could tell you immediately if it's retracted or dilated. Of course, considering the environment. If you take you out in the sun, it will retract. But in normal environment, if you're talking to someone, and suddenly you see his eye retracting, he doesn't really like what you're telling him, or he feels offended or something. Or on the contrary, if you talk to him and suddenly the eyes in the same conditions get dilated, it's a good sign. That's why many poker players are supposed to hide their eyes by wearing black glasses for the pupils. A few words about the nose. It's a very popular feature. Actually, it's in the middle of the face, and it shows the intensity of our emotional feelings, how important it is for ourselves to impose or to have our emotions, our wants, and everything materialized. The ideal is supposed to be, if we have an orthogonal triangle here, it has to be somewhere right there, and create these angles according to the ancient Greeks. And from the profile, we could see a few things depending on the profile of the nose. But it's two things. We look at it from the head on and from the profile. So let's see a few profiles here that were created a long time ago. That's why these names, the typology, was named after people from various areas of the earth. I mean, at the time, they called about the Grecian nose, the Roman nose, the Jewish nose, because they found this kind of way of separating them. Of course, it's nothing to do with where you're from, but that's the way they used it at that time. So the high convexity, because most Roman emperors had that. The middle convexity, and the Grecian nose, the more straight, and the Jewish nose, good in dealing, wheeling and selling and all that, very good in negotiations. The sharp bridge going outwards, and the French nose. You can notice how it goes under the ideal. So we have the noses that go and then inwards, and the flat low bridge here. Our nose does change with time. It's the last feature that grows, develops later in life, and it continues to grow. So the Grecian is supposed to be the nose that has more balanced judgment, aesthetic nature, love of art and music, and a natural authority, one would say. The Roman nose is the classic nose of attack because most Roman emperors had that. It has the high convexity. This person has high energy, is good at controlling and really wants to control other people and doesn't mind bending the rules in order to get what is important for that person to implement. It shows shrewdness, a person who is high confidence and wants to impose himself on others. We have the middle zone, the middle convexity here, which shares the same energy of the other, but it's more a nose of defense. Many people who are in medicine or that area have this kind of profile of the nose. They don't want to dominate, they want to protect people who are in need. And here we have the uniform convexity, financial expertise, and this always goes with plumpness. The more plump the nose is, all these characteristics are more pronounced. If it's very thin, it doesn't have all these things. So temperament that's both energetic and stable and very good in negotiations and optimistic. Here you see it deviates from the hybrids, it goes low brids and then it comes down, a lower convexity. This type of person usually has both attack and offense, always has the self in the back of the mind, always what is best for the same person. So can change according to the situation. The classic French nose where many women wanted to take is more passive nose, like the babies. With a person that is left and can be carried away and live all their whatever fantasies and everything, but it's not that doesn't show assertion. And the sharp nose, people who comes really like that, is more inquisitive, always detail-oriented, want to know everything about everything, to acquire as much information of everything. Show some pride sometimes, interfering in other people's situations in order to learn things. The low bridge, low energy here, people who keep things to themselves, good organized, tidy, but more esoteric, more internal. So as we said before, we have both the width and the profile shows. The wider the nose, every feature that is associated has more sustainability. People who have wider noses have more staying power. People who have thinner noses have more highlights, go like this. Have enthusiasm, but don't have the sustained power that the wide nose would have. Now, the tip of the nose is quite interesting. Upward tip is someone who is impulsive, must have everything they want right now and get carried away. This is more controlled, and the downward tip is a person who can control and then suddenly explodes. And people who have this type of nose, of tip of the nose, are very insistent in their needs. They have to have everything right here now. Well, you can come up. No, you don't have that type. More controlled. A few words about the mouth, the facial feature that most men look at the first seconds when they see a woman. They spend about half of those 10 seconds looking at the mouth, and it's the most attractive facial feature according to surveys. The mouth is very interesting because it's the battleground of the face. It's between our emotional and our physical forces, and it's so eloquent, even with when silent. It's like the canvas where all our emotions are written. The small twitches can say so many things of how we feel at each moment. It's very eloquent, and it's with the eyes and the mouth are the two features if you want to focus on to see where the person is right here now. Just focus on that. The minute expressions could show there. So the ideal mouth has the upper lip and the lower lip in equal proportions. The upper lip shows the ability to give emotionally, and the lower lip symbolizes our need to receive emotionally. So givers have the upper, if you look at babies, they have the upper lip more. And as we grow older, the upper lip thins with age because the mentality makes us more takers. So it's interesting to see the proportion about the upper and the lower lip. And each person, depending on where they are emotionally, their mouth changes so much. When we feel In giving mode, they get fuller. When we feel like we're threatened, our upper lip gets thinner, much thinner. It's very interesting how our mouth changes so much. Here we have a little feature, the philtrum, which symbolizes the flow of energy between the emotional and the physical. It's supposed to be positive. It also shows fertility. And when it's deep and well formed, it shows a person who has ambition. When it fades out, it shows somehow a dissipation of energy. Someone who starts with something in their mind and midway is losing it somewhere. Again, if the upper lip protrudes, this is a person who is more giving but also impulsive. This person is attracted to extramarital affairs and all these kind of things. They go for the sensation. Can't control it.
You know there is a party tonight, so we need to have
All right, yeah. You will go and analyze everyone. Here, you see the lower lip is more plump than the upper. Look at the impression between this lips and these lips. This is more taker lip, needs more to be loved. So if you encounter this kind of person, you have to give him more reassurance, something to tell him more about himself than the other person. So we have lips that are fleshy and thin, but it doesn't matter so much the actual to measure the distance or the millimeters. It's more, we're talking about proportions. So here we have lips that are more thin, but by compression. And if we take this vertical line from the nose downwards and the whole mouth is going backwards, this person has the ability to control his emotional response. His emotions, is able to control it. Whereas this person, where is more plump and everything comes, all this area comes out, is very impulsive, is not able to control what he feels inside. So it's not the actual size, it's the shape of how the lips are formed. Another sign, now that you're talking about going out tonight, it's like a bow, and these people are quite spontaneous and flirty and everything in that area. Again, not controlling the whole situation. It's bow-shaped. We'll come up now in a second after chin and jaw and see where each of us is, if you want. So the jaw is the powerhouse. It shows our energy reserves. It's supposed to come in a horizontal from here, and it shows we have adequate energy to implement what we want. If we have a projecting jaw or chin, it's the jaw and the chin. The jaw shows the general activity of the face, and the chin is like the flavoring. So if you have from the profile a man whose chin is projecting, you know it's high testosterone. You have a face that is an achiever, who's a go-getter. He doesn't stay back and wait. He goes for all the opportunities to personal advantage. Sometimes he could be oppressing to other people. He doesn't really understand it all the times. The projecting chin. On the contrary, when you have a receding chin, this person has lower energy. So it's important for these people to create the right environment around them that is not very much distracting with their energy levels or stressing them out. These people are more affected from the environment. If you remember before when we talked about the inner face at the two different faces, the left and the right, this is more the second one, the blue face, that it was more elliptical. So these people are more affected from the environment. Whereas the first jaw, this one, creates his own environment. In women, it's more typical to have a more receding jaw. But when women have more dynamic jaws, they have more of the masculine energy and strength to materialize whatever they want. And when we see the chin and is bony, angular, you have someone who has a lot of intensity and nervous energy. And when we see something that is more muscular and with a dimple, there's a person who's really passionate about something they like. Like you have muscularity here. I could see a dimple of the chin. Shows, yeah. No, not you. Whatever interests you, you can take all the energy and channel it into something we want. Enthusiasm, affection. A few words about the ear. The ear symbolizes the embryo, like that. Again, it's divided in 3 zones. It's the one feature that doesn't change. It is located between our more conscious mental, let's say, zones and our subconscious on the back. Men who have their ear, if you take like a horizontal here between and you put it through the face, if it's very in the center of the face, we have more the subconscious, the more self-preservation forces that are dominant. Women have their ear more further back, so it's the more conscious and mental, intellectual abilities that are dominant. And you can understand many things about the person's, let's say, balances between the conscious and subconscious forces within them. Also, a nice test for you, if you have an intimate other. This here, the notch, indicates how giving we are. People who have a very small notch are good in controlling their finances, where people who have a very large notch are like more spendthrifts. It's this thing here. It's the little notch here. We talked about the 3 temperaments, the rational, the emotional, and the physical, with the shapes that we saw before. And we have the model, dynamic, controlled, and passive. And this is the flavor, the type, whether it's expansive, we have open features, extroversion, or internalized features, retracted features. So all these are funneled together and make us who we are. So you have various faces, round, square, narrow, and make the how we are, and more big nose and all these things. So here we have 2 good examples of introvert and extrovert. You see the difference in the features here? Between the retracted features on the left and the open receptors on the right. The mouth is close together, the nose is closed, the eyes are very close to the eyebrows. Where here they're more open, more fleshy lips, the eyebrows at more distance with the eyes. And the emotional types, because you see the middle zone here is more pronounced rather than the upper zone and the lower zone. And this guy here is more impulsive because all this comes out, whereas this one is more vertical, so it's more controlled, the 2 zones. So here's a difference. What type is the one on the left? Yeah, impulsive, more brutal, more, let's say, physical. And the right one? More introverted and more intellectual. You see, it's the upper zone that is more, that's like the jaw here is not very developed. Here it's all jaw. And here it's more the forehead and everything, and here it's not much forehead. So here we have 2 physical types, and both are passive models. But you see, this one is more extroverted, and this is more introverted. Because the inner frame here, you see it's closed, the nose is more sharp, the lips are closer, and this is more jolly, more extroverted. Both are physical types because the jaw is more predominant. Both are passive, there's not much tonality, but the inside here of this area shows this one is more retracted and this one is more open. So there are differentiations. Anyone wants to come up and see whatever? Everybody. Cool. Okay. So, who wants to start with the forehead? You? I have a pretty predominant forehead. Okay. Okay. So, do you think we need the camera to be showing this on the slide, or you can see the face? Okay. Πήγαινε Valdo. Okay. Do you want to come? Who's coming? You? Your name?
George.
Hi, George. Great. So, we're going to sit, maybe we should sit here. So, no, you don't need to sit down, it's better standing up. So, so you look at the camera and we'll see your face here. No, it's fine, you're fine. Nice and tall, I don't have to be bending down. We're in? Okay. We'll talk about the forehead. I'm too loud here. Okay. Excuse me? High forehead, okay. Do you want to turn on the profile? Cool. It's very nice. So, what do you think that the forehead is? Is it upright? Is it inclined? Which, huh? It's upright. So you see the first zone here and the middle zone of the forehead, which shows a lot of memory of facts and figures. The top zone is the more, let's say, it shows more our imagination. The lower one is the perception, and the middle zone is very pronounced. You're really good at remembering things. And also, you could see, if you look at the camera, you see that he has horizontal muscularity here, which shows a very practical mind. When you have these horizontal lines here, it shows muscularity of a person who is very practical in doing things, in thinking things. But we're talking only about the intellectual part, because later on, further down, things may change. So we're a mixture of all our features. We're not just our head or just our nose. Like maybe our forehead shows that we have, let's say, control, but we have a jaw underneath that gives us impulsiveness. What happens in that? It's a mixture of all these features. So, do you want, John? We said John. George. Do you want to do with George, or do you want another feature with another person here?
Let's continue. Let's do a full George.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about the middle zone here. How do you think the middle zone is? Is it predominant? Is it balanced? Is it more retracted? What do you think his middle zone is? Okay. If you looked at the whole shape of the face, because we're going to do the whole face now, which of the three zones is wider? Can you look a bit further that? Yeah, that, perfect. Look ahead now. That's it. So you have a straight head on. So it is the forehead and the middle zone, and here it goes slightly in. So it's very balanced, and it's slightly a predominance of the intellectual and the emotional zone together. But the middle zone, if you look at the height of each zone, which zone height-wise is longer? The forehead. It goes from here, from the point from here, that does the slope backwards. It doesn't have to do with where the hair starts or not. It has to do with when the slope starts. So we have the upper zone, the middle zone is over here, and the lower zone. Which one do you think is higher? The middle zone is higher. Okay. Okay. Do you think his nose is long or short? Long nose? Like if you measure this and you take it here, you see, look at his nose from here. So his nose is shorter. So he's more intelligent based. Emotionally, what this shows emotionally is someone who likes his own way and is somewhat irresponsible emotionally. And the lower zone, sorry, we're having some fun here. Yes. And the lower zone, there is physical activity. If you can turn on the profile. So, very good. You see the jaw here? Maybe if you come further here so it's more, okay. But look at me. We needed to. So, how is the lower part going if you take a vertical line like this? So it's retracted. So he controls his emotional response. Here, as we saw the mouth before, remember? It doesn't protrude. So it's the mentality, the emotions, and then it's the activity. The last one of these faces. Okay, do you want to do individual features or someone else wants to come up?
Someone else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to ask anything you want to ask? Okay. We're not doing a whole full-fledged personality profile here. We're just doing bits and pieces on some parts. Okay, so yeah. Oh, you want to come? Please. Please, please. Your name? Urta. Hi, Urta.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good.
Great. No, it's fine. Okay, so let's do The features. What was your strong feature?
Eyes.
Your eyes. Okay. So let's see. Can you zoom in? Can you zoom into the eyes? All right. Okay, let's focus on that. Cool. Okay, what can you see in these eyes? How about the eyebrows? Are they like strong? Are they more thin? Strong eyebrows. How about the distance between eyes? Is it large or is it small? Small. What does that show? Detail-oriented, sensitivity. Okay, just from the eyes, okay, because further down, you see her jaw is quite pronounced here, so she has strength here. But in this area, this is what it shows. Okay, do you want to turn on the right so we can see, what is the, maybe you move a bit further here so your eyes, okay. Look at me here, straight on head. So, are the eyes more going out or more deep set? Going out. All right. And in conjunction with a forehead here, is someone has a very vivid imagination and dreams and all that. And if you look ahead, just look at the camera. Look at the camera. Θες να τη βάλεις μέσα? Ναι. Βγαίνεις λίγο έξω. Okay, which zone do you think is more wide of the three? The middle zone. What does that show? So is this person more action-oriented, more emotional, response to emotional things, or more to intellectual? More affected, deeply emotional things. And we can also see, we didn't discuss about it, the ears, when we can see them from, they're more coming out. Many actors have that. Means a person who has a great desire to stand out and to do something that differentiates them in life. And it gives this great drive to do these things. And the clear eye also, we didn't talk about colors of eyes because it has to do also where you're from. I mean, more Mediterranean people have more, let's say, brown eyes, dark eyes. People who are more northerners have lighter eyes. But generally speaking, the clearer the eye shows more the psychic abilities of a person and can have more intellectual imagination, but also the ability to distinguish between emotions and logic. And the darker the color, there's more passion in the person. So, do you want any other feature to do with together, or?
So the color means what?
The color is just one indication, along with all the other things. So it's not just the color and that's the end of the world, because there have so many indications. We're just talking about these signals here. Do you want to say about her nose or anything else, or someone else? Okay. All right. I would say, let's talk about her chin, which is interesting. What was your strong feature?
My eyes.
Your eyes, okay. Your eyes are a strong feature. You have a lot of intensity in your eyes. You're right on that. Would you like to talk about her jaw and chin and jaw? What do you see here? Very straight. It's controlled. You have a strong jaw for a girl, which means you have a lot of intensity. When you want something, you go after it. You don't just wait for situations. So it's interesting because from the head on, you could see the person who is more emotional, that means more affected, but from the profile, you could see this area coming out that shows a person who is firm and goes to, materialize their needs and their wants. Okay, from that, anyone else? No? I have no, I mean, I'm very happy with Urta to talk about other things, or if anyone else wants to come up and, okay.
Yes.
Θα μας πούνε. Okay, θα μας πούνε. Okay, we have 5 minutes. Do you want to lower the tripod a bit, or the camera?
I can try.
No, you're just fine there. Okay, do you have a can you make them a ponytail? Ναι, το ξέχασα. Nah. All right. Okay, what feature should we talk? Your name?
Fleur.
Fleur. Great. What haven't we discussed? The nose, the mouth, or the chin? What do you want to talk about?
What's your strong feature?
Well, Michael's very kind. No, Martin was very kind. He said my eyes.
All right. So your eyes. Okay, let's talk about the eyes. So let's zoom in.
I would have said my jaw.
Your jaw.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's do the jaw. Okay, your jaw actually does have intensity, and the chin, if you turn here over the right, you could see it's controlled, but this, as it comes further out, you could see that there's a person that has a lot of energy and the ability to implement that, and a go-getter. And from the head on, you could see how vertical these lines are, and they're more, let's say, they have muscularity, and also it's more delineated, the angles. It's not very rounded face, which shows intensity in everything. So we have the three zones, the emotional, the mental, and the physical ones that are very balanced in width. So it means that equally influences that have to do with our intellectual state, our emotional state, and our physical state are equally distributed in the person. A lot of energy. You see the strength of the zone here and the width of the zone.
What zone?
It's the
That part?
yeah, the lower. So you have good ability to implement in whatever you need and what you want. It's and also in the subconscious level as well. It's not only mentally I think about something, let's go do it. It's this inner strength that, and there's a difference. And many times people ask me, what's the difference between a strong nose and like a strong jaw? Because like a Roman nose shows intensity, and a strong jaw also shows intensity and go-getting. The one has, the base of it is more emotional, psychological, whereas the lower part is more physical based. It's more our constitution has the strength, doesn't tire easily. It's more like a gut strength that comes further out. So it's more long-term. And people who have stronger jaws, you see when they grow up older, they're more active, always active. They can't stay still. They have to do something. And they do things up to a great age, whereas other people that have more, let's say, delicate jaws, after a certain age, they get more tired easier. Their energy is more expendable. So, anything else you want to talk about? The nose. Okay, her nose. Okay, Romanish nose, and the tip of the nose is horizontal, but it is strong. It's very important for you to do your thing and to get it across. And the forehead. How about the forehead? Straight. And imagination up here. So doesn't decide immediately, has to analyze things. So here's interesting, because we have a forehead that takes its time, but also we have a jaw that's just do it right here now. So these opposing forces. But it's good, because if you had a slanting forehead, we would just let the leash unleash everything and go for it. So it's good, but it's keeping control of some things. So very energetic, no worries, anything task, you will do everything, what is needed. And very balanced face.
Thank you.
All right. So, are they going to call us when we have to go somewhere else? Should we continue until whatever? The bus is already waiting for us? No. Oh. Oh, we're waiting for the bus. Okay, so anybody wants to come okay. So, what was your strong feature?
What was my strong feature? So where do I stand here?
Okay. Okay, so who wants to have a go on what's your name?
Anas.
Anas?
Yeah.
Okay, on Anas' mouth. Upper lip or lower lip? Okay. Okay. And you want to turn as you are, just turn, look at me. Okay, so lower lip. How's it go? Outside or inside? Outside. So what does that mean? Outspoken, more impulsive or more controlled emotions? When you feel something, you keep it inside or you just let it go?
I tend to let it go.
Okay. Good, great. It's good, it's very healthy. It's much better than keeping everything and internalizing. It's not good for ourselves. So, what about the forehead? Just a bit as you are. There you are, perfect. So, what about the forehead? Straight. Again, you could see a slight preponderance of the upper, which shows imagination, and it's rather, I would say, between the middle forehead and the upper forehead, between memory and imagination. And the lower, the perceptive part is not that dominant. And how about the nose? No, not that. French would be further, like it would go really this way. So it's somewhere in between. It certainly doesn't have a high convexity here, but the lower part is more predominant. Our nose has to do also with our emotions and our lungs, and it's like what we didn't discuss about was the nostrils are quite important because it's where all the air comes through and everything, and it tells us about the dynamic, how dynamic our emotions are. People, when they're excited, have dilated nostrils. When they're not with it, they contract, and generally people who have more dilated nostrils are more excitable. Like they really feel everything much more intensely than people who have more thin nostrils. So this is quite interesting to look at people and see whether they're dilated or whether they're permanently dilated and excited, their nostrils, because it shows where they are and the way they're breathing at the time. So you're very excitable, and that's very interesting. What else should we talk? Do you want to ask me? Please, ask me anything. All right. Well, what we didn't have time to talk about the ears, we have the outer helix here, and we have the inner helix. The outer helix, how developed these helix shows whether we have the power of continuance, which is this zone. This has more with the ego to do. And our lobes, so our intellectual ability as well. It's also another indication. So, here we have the inner helix that is a bit coming further outward, which shows a person who has a need to be independent. And the outer helix over here is not that developed, which shows that maybe you begin something and midway you lose, you're bored more easily with something sometimes, and not have the sustained focus and energy when you start something, like the same passion to fulfill it, all of it, like somewhere midway, you just prefer to start another project or something like that?
Is it a question or is it a statement?
It's somewhere in between.
Of course, there could be some truth to that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else we want to discuss about, or who else wants?
I have a question. Anesh seems to have a bit of a baby face in profile.
Yes, in a way, yes, because his upper zone is more developed and the emotional zone is more developed, and the lower zone is not that much. It's more short chin. So he's mental and emotional mostly. So anything that affects the emotional region is much more developed. So you respond to anything that affects you emotionally, and it affects more deeper than, let's say, you, that have more strength. Like it could affect you, but not that deep. Whereas your sensors, in a way, are more, like if you have an alarm system, you have the sensitivity to high. You can pick up a lot of things because your receptors are quite open, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and you receive a lot of information, and it's somewhat hard sometimes to close the sensitivity. You take in too much information from the environment, and sometimes it affects you more than other people who have more retracted features. They're more closed. Just as you said, the baby face has this thing that's very receptive, perceives so much information, doesn't have the ability to stop certain things. And as we grow older, each personality is different. The features that are more closed, more retracted, show a control we put. We're more internal than external. You're certainly more extroverted, geared to the external world. Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Who's next? If anyone, please.
Are you by now unconsciously right away evaluating this?
Well, all of us are doing this, whether we want it or not. We're all doing it. The thing is, from here, what I wish, if everyone could, in a way, cultivate our sensory acuity and start looking at things, especially the emotional state in which other person is, like from the eyes and the mouth and all that, will help us, be able. Many times in team building, they use this, so our teams are easier to communicate with each other. So this, okay, I do, and everybody of you are doing it. Just the difference is I have more distinctions because I've been studying this for years. It becomes subconscious, and as like when we start to drive, we have to think about if you're stick shift, do this and do this. But afterwards, we're texting, we're driving, and we're talking to a person next to us, and everything has happened in automatic pilot. It goes from a neocortex, it goes to the ganglia, the basic ganglia. So we want some things to become more conscious. So let's see here. What was your strength?
It was the cheeks, up here, and the cheeks.
Okay. So, μπορείς να ανοίξεις λίγο το luminance, να φαίνεται. Έχει αντιλιά. Okay. Κράτα το πιο ανοιχτό το κάδρο. Έτσι. Okay. So, your middle zone is developed. So it's very symmetrical, but there's a slight, if you measure like from here, and the lower zone and the upper zone, there's a slight preponderance of the middle zone. So you're right with the cheeks that are dominant in you. And also your middle zone all over, and your nose is quite prominent, which shows a strength of personality, what we call this personal power. That's the same thing. And do you want to turn on the profile? Okay, you can see from the profile, the lower zone goes vertical, is controlled. This comes out, it's the more emotional part. And the upward, what is this? It's inclining. It's slightly inclined. Not too much inclined, but slightly. You're more visual. You have more visual memory in things. You're more practical in your approach of things. More practical, and if we go back to the other things we talked about, the kinesthetic, the visual, and the auditory states, what mode do you think you would be mostly? In visual? Visual? And how do you remember things? You have to see it? Yeah. Okay, so you see this here. You see how close the eyebrows are to the eyes. It's a more visual thinker. If it's far away, it's more kinesthetic or auditory. When the eyebrows are close to the eyes, it's more perceptive in that part. But also from the auditory, I would say, because we have a system, it's not just one, it's the preferred, but it's also a syntax. Some people have to see something, have to hear, and then have to feel. Others need to see, to feel, and then hear. So it's the mix of all these. So, okay, thank you for your time. You're welcome. And have a great day. There are many things.
Many things, okay. What does the cheek say?
You have a strong, yeah, it's strong. It's like a rectangular. You have energy, but you're more emotionally. You need to feel things that are gut feeling right in order to do them.
So feel purpose, yeah, the right thing. And the nose is
Strength. You have a strong. It's
interesting.
cool. Have a great day.
But the visual is right, absolutely right. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye bye. Bye.